Hello, welcome everybody to the Hopkins LAC Virtual Candidate Forum 2024. Thank you all for joining us on a busy and beautiful Saturday. In the midst of campaign season, I know that it's a busy time and just wanted everyone to know that we are welcoming a candidate for House District 49A. This is our last session of the forum, and we were confirmed to hear from both candidates, Stacy Bettison and Alex Falconer. We just learned that Alex is not feeling well, has been sick for a while, so is unable to attend the forum today at this time. So we are happy to continue the forum with Stacy, who is here in the virtual space with us. So we would like to, at this time, Ms. Bettison, let you take 2 minutes to introduce yourself and your campaign.
Great. Well, thank you. And thank you everyone for being here. My name is Stacy Bettison. I've been a resident of District 49A for 15 years. I'm a single mother of 3 children. I'm a lawyer, and I'm also the owner of a small PR agency. Very shortly after I announced my candidacy for Minnesota House in April, I asked to meet with all 3 superintendents separately in our district to listen and learn about what challenges schools face and why children's test scores are dropping year after year. And I want to be very clear that nothing I say today is an indictment of our teachers, principals, administrators, and staff. We have gifted and dedicated people teaching and guiding our children. And I'm grateful to anyone who enters the profession of educating our kids. But with only 50% of children reading and able to perform math at state level standards, we have a real problem. Minnesota is now ranked 19th in the nation, and we used to be ranked 5th. Keep in mind, our district's current representative of 8 years, Lori Pryor, chaired the House Education Policy Committee, and it's under her leadership that proficiency in reading and math has so precipitously dropped. Now, we can only blame COVID for so long for falling test scores. In Minnesota, the proportion of students meeting state proficiency standards remains far below pre-pandemic levels, but yet students in Alabama and elsewhere have returned to pre-pandemic achievement levels in math and other states in reading. So Lori Pryor, in her role as chair of the House Education Policy Committee, is on record saying, and I quote, "We know that this is going to make it hard for principals and administrators." But my question is, why is she and other Democrats voting for oppressive and financially unsustainable mandates that are going to make it hard for principals and administrators? We all want our children to be happy and healthy and productive members of society. But for so many Minnesota kids, their future is being cut off at the knees before they are even out of middle school. And I am committed to addressing this problem, learning about it, and learning what we can do to help Minnesota kids succeed.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that introduction. Now we'll just take a few minutes to introduce ourselves, the Legislative Action Coalition, and also to talk about the guidelines and this candidate forum in particular. You'll see here in our opening slide kind of what we do here at Hopkins, which is center student experience and voice. These are student members of the LAC meeting with our now Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, and they did this as members of the LAC here in Hopkins. And what we do is the Legislative Action Coalition is a nonpartisan advocacy group. It is comprised of school board members, parents, students, and community members who are passionate about public education. We advocate for education funding and policy at both the state and federal levels. To do this, we work closely with our district leadership. to identify pressing educational issues each year. Through that work, we create a legislative platform that is approved by the school board and represents the district's priorities. We are recognized as a valuable resource for legislators, policymakers, and advocacy groups for research, community connections, and timely advocacy. We do that also through partnering with the Association of Metropolitan School Districts and the Minnesota State School Boards Association. We also partner with our neighboring school districts advocacy groups to host community events on education finance, special education, and school safety. And finally, one of our biggest days of action is an annual day of advocacy at the Capitol, including individual meetings with our 9 legislators that represent the district. You will see here that the Hopkins School District is a little bit unique in that we cover many municipalities, and thus we have a lot of representatives who work with us at the legislature. We have 9, and that it gives us the opportunity to really have a big impact across the legislature and to build lots of relationships. Today's schedule, we are on our final session. We break them out into each House and Senate district so that all candidates can get the same questions and our community members can hear the candidates that they will be voting for. The forum guidelines are as follows. We do not support or oppose any political party or candidate. The views expressed in this forum are those of the candidates and not of the LAC or Hopkins Public Schools. And the purpose of this forum is to offer an opportunity for voters to hear the candidates discuss important education issues that will affect students and families in our school district and across Minnesota. The Public Schools Legislative Action Coalition is a nonpartisan advocacy group. Guidelines for constituent questions. The community had an opportunity to submit questions in advance of today's forum. If any questions are unclear, hostile, or of a personal nature, they will not be used. And questions that are similar may be combined and summarized by the moderator. Questions may be submitted via chat during our YouTube live event, and the moderator will treat them as stated above, though only questions related to education will be entertained for the purposes of this forum. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves and 1 minute for a concluding statement. We've already done the introduction. And then each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each question that's presented by the moderator. A timekeeper will present a running timer, although I'm not sure we're gonna stick quite closely to that as we needed to in other sessions. And the LAC would like to remind candidates that this is not a debate, and we reserve the right to utilize the mute feature if a candidate exceeds the time or does not abide by this format. So I hope all of that is clear, and we've gotten through all of the housekeeping bits. So now to the fun part. My co-hosts today are Tim and Brooke, and they will be asking the questions that were given to the candidates before the forum. So these are questions that the candidates had an opportunity to prepare their response. So I will turn it over to Kim to ask the first question on vouchers.
All right, great. Thanks for joining us today. In recent years, numerous proposals have been made in the legislature to provide public funding for private and religious schools, either directly through vouchers or indirectly through tax credits, tax sheltered accounts, or by routing tuition through tax exempt organizations. What is your position in providing public funding for non-public schools? Please explain your reasoning.
Sure, thank you so much. Well, I have always been a supporter of public schools, and my views on this changed during the pandemic, to be honest, when I saw parents begging classes to be held in person. When Walls ordered the shutdown, my greatest concern was the kids who were going to fall through the cracks, who where school is their safe place and where they get, meals and, mentorship and teacher support. And I publicly said at that time, this is a grave situation, and I'm concerned about children. There was a large exodus from public schools at that time. And while private and charter school enrollment went up, and these weren't all wealthy families. It wasn't only religious schools which saw an enrollment increase. Homeschooling also has gone up dramatically. Some of the issues that I've been hearing that parents are concerned about with public education when I'm knocking on doors and talking to voters are falling test scores and schools not teaching the basics, districts keeping personal information about students from their parents, this sort of thing. And so I generally am in favor of some sort of system where given that our current education transfer system basically allows students to move from district to district, this amounts as a voucher, and I would certainly favor some sort of system that we can come up with that a formula that attributes fixed costs of a student, and that leaves that money with the home district, but then the variable costs that they would go wherever the student goes, as long as that school is making adequate yearly progress.
That's a beautiful Oscar Awards music for the end of time.
That was unexpected yet lovely.
Right? Thank you. Our next question has to do with funding, and that will be Brooke Roper.
Hello, Stacy. So I'm Brooke Roper. I'm a member of the Hopkins School Board, and I want to ask you the second question. So if elected, your oath to uphold the Minnesota State Constitution includes the Education Clause, which reads in part, the legislator shall make such provisions by taxation or otherwise will secure a thorough and efficient system of public schools throughout the state. As you are aware, increase in the state funding formula are not keeping up with inflation and expenses. Consumer price index increases over the last 2 years have ranged from 2.5% to 9.1%. The increase in the formula in 2023 still resulted in deficit spending in some districts, even with reductions to curb expenses, due in part to many mandates that came with the funding increase. Do you support an increase in the per pupil formula and removal of the current cap of 3% on the inflation factor for the per pupil formula? Do you have any additional solutions to secure sound funding for Minnesota public schools?
So thank you for the question. And I will be very honest with you on this question, and the answer that I believe is true, which is we had the largest funding for education in the last biennium, and yet the answer to the question of whether schools are fully funded or adequately funded is we really don't know. And I as a candidate don't know. This education funding is a very complex topic, and I am really still learning about all of the things that go into education funding. So I just preface my response with that. I don't know. So I don't know the answer to the question. But first, we must ensure that the funding provided to schools does not come with unfunded mandates that force school districts to put allocated money in places other than the classroom. So individual school districts, with the help of school boards, administrators, teachers, and parents, know best how to meet the needs of families, teachers, kids, and the staff in their district. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing that I would say too, that goes to this funding issue, is we need to examine what exactly is needed for special education funding. We need to determine whether there are gaps in services for special education, and if there are gaps, where are they? Without knowing that, and I don't know the answer to that question either, but without knowing that, I can't tell you whether lifting this cap is the right decision. We also need to make sure that schools are safe places for students to learn, and we must evaluate education policies and not just put money at problems in the hopes of fixing what is wrong if we don't know if those funds are actually going to fix. I think that mandates have been a huge problem. They're suffocating schools, both operationally and financially. So what we need to do on the funding issue for schools, I am very, very eager to learn more, and I'm committed to learning more. And because I want to get this right. Students deserve to get this right. Teachers deserve it. Principals, everyone does.
Thank you so much. And now we have the next question from Kim will be about MDE.
All right, great. And sorry for not introducing myself before. I'm Kim Meehan, member of the LAC, but also a high school teacher. How does your vision for public education in Minnesota align with the priorities of the Minnesota Department of Education?
Sure. So I read through the Due North Education Plan. And, I would say generally, in broad terms, these are all great, great visions and great aspirations. And so I wouldn't say that anything is misaligned. But what I would say is I don't see some things that I feel like should be priorities. So what I don't see in this plan is a focus on mastering or even proficiency in the basics. So math, reading, science, and writing. I don't see, a focus on student and parent accountability. I don't see a focus on creating safe schools, which we know when there's, when we have kids that are disruptive in the classroom and we're not servicing those kids and we're letting them stay in the classroom, three groups of people are hurt. Teachers are hurt. Students who are not being disruptive are hurt because there's a chaotic environment in which they're learning. And then thirdly, the student who is being disruptive is not getting their needs met, because a disruptive child, as a parent, I can just say, as a child, when they're being disruptive, something's going on. And by not addressing and putting priorities on how do we help the classroom be less chaotic, I really think we're missing the mark, and our classrooms are becoming a chaotic place where learning is hard. And I know that from stories I've heard of from kids, from my own kids who are in public school. I've heard it from teachers who are teaching in public school, former
Thank
teachers.
you. Time is up
Okay.
on that one.
Thank you.
I
Where did the Oscar music go? Did we
don't
drop that?
know. I don't
Okay.
know.
That was like such a great thing.
I know. I'll
If
try.
we
I'll
like
try and
it.
hum.
If
Bring
we
it
like it,
back.
I could let it happen.
Let it happen.
Okay, all right, I'll let it happen.
Thank you, Rachel. And now, thank you for your responses to those previously submitted questions.
Sure.
Now we have some questions that have come in from the community that I will turn it over to our students who are here to ask some questions. Our first is Evelyn, who is a 9th grader at the Hopkins High School.
The first question is, schools have changed how they deliver education, but not how they assess students. What are your thoughts on changing how to measure student success?
Yeah, that's a totally fair question. And I will tell you that when I met with the superintendent for Hopkins, we talked about test scores, and her, thinking was that she was resolute. She said, test scores aren't a full representation of a child's capabilities or how they're doing. And I think that's fair. I think that's definitely a fair point. And of course, she's the educator, and I certainly defer to her. It's a snapshot. Test scores are certainly a snapshot in time. And we know that some kids are really good test takers, and some kids are not good test takers. And some kids are super good at standardized testing, and some kids, cripple with standardized testing. When I was a kid, did not do well with standardized testing. So I totally understand that. Not being an educator myself, I don't have the answers for exactly how we would measure how a student is doing and whether they're making progress. That is something I would very much love to hear from people who are way more knowledgeable than I am, and how do we assess how kids are doing. I would imagine there's some best practices out there that are being used in other places, and I would welcome the opportunity to dig into that. And if there's other ways that we can assess how kids are doing, let's do that. I mean, we know that there's other ways besides standardized testing, and that's just obvious. But I don't think that those things. It's not the end of the story. It's not the full story. But I think these test scores are, it's a snapshot, as I said, and I value other ways that we can see how are kids doing and where do they need support. There it is.
Thank you. And now Mia Osman who's one of our, no? Okay, Evelyn is doing two, and then you,
Um,
Mia? Okay. I thought they were
Um,
alternating.
My second question is, many Hopkins public schools are unsafe to walk or bike to. We know that walking to school has tremendous mental and physical health benefits for students. What will you do to expand the safe routes to school available for students?
Can you just repeat the final question?
What will you do to expand the safe routes to school available for students?
Okay, so I love the question. I'm not sure I have an answer to it because I'm not sure I know all of the routes to all of the schools. But maybe the best way for me to answer that is to say that yes, walking or biking to school is such a beautiful thing. I did it when I was a kid. My kid does it when he goes to school. And sometimes he's on a bike, and sometimes he has missed the bus, and so he needs to walk. And sometimes he'll call me and say, "Can I get a ride? I'm starting to walk." And I say, "Go ahead and finish your walk. It's really good for you. You get some fresh air and clear your head." So, I mean, I don't know what the best way to make for safe routes is. I think that we need to encourage, if there's, I'm assuming that there's adequate bike racks at schools where people can throw their bikes. I guess what I can say right now is just that, I support that. And if there's suggestions on what we can do, I would love to hear what those are. And I would be open to hearing from them because I value outside time for kids before they get to school and after. Sorry, that's my cat. If you heard a screech, did you hear a screech in the background? Yes, that's my two cats fighting. They're playing.
Nice.
So it's all in good fun. It doesn't sound like good fun, but it really is.
Yeah. As a fellow cat owner, I fully understand.
Okay, good.
And now I will turn it over to Mia. You want to introduce yourself, Mia?
Hi, my name is Mia. I'm a senior at Hopkins High School. I'm on the student board, and I'm really happy to have this opportunity because I wish to major in political science, and I also own a cat. So that was kind of random.
Good.
So the first community question that I have is, Minnesota is one of 8 states that provides free school meals for students. In all of these states, the program is more popular than expected and more families are participating. When we add inflationary costs for food and delivery, all 8 states are over budget. How can Minnesota increase and stabilize future funding to feed students?
Can I just have you repeat the last 2 sentences?
Okay, so the last 2 sentences were, when we add inflationary costs for food and delivery, all 8 states are over budget. How can Minnesota increase and stabilize future funding to feed students?
Okay. So, so what I heard you say is all the other 8 states who are doing it have more money than they need right now for, or they've allotted for an inflation adjustment. Is that fair? Can I get a nod? Am I understanding the question correctly? Yes. Is that okay? I'll just go with that. Let's just assume for this. Yeah, let's assume that there's an inflation adjustment in the other 8 states. Here's how I feel about the school feeding kids in school. Totally support it. We need kids to be nourished, and it's very, very difficult to learn when you don't have energy in your body. And we need kids to have energy in their body. I feel, and I haven't studied this, so this is another caveat moment where I'm like, I have a lot more to learn. I'm a candidate at this point, and I'm eager to learn more. But here's how I think about it. I feel like there's a lot of people that we've allotted a lot of money and food to people who don't necessarily need to have access to that food, that they don't need food assistance, that they have adequate resources at home, and they have enough support at home where they can either pay for the food and it's not a hardship, or they can make their own food at home and bring it to school. So I have always felt like, let's find a way to have this food available for the people who need it, but not be paying for it for the people who don't need it. And I know that the concern of making it available to all was to avoid a stigma, which of course I favor. But I have to believe in this day and age that we have the technology to make it so that when you swipe your food card or your badge and you're going through the lunch line, no one knows whether you're taking, whether you're paying or you're not. And that's how I feel like we need to address the food cost issue. I have also heard firsthand from my own kids and others that there's a lot of food waste, and we shouldn't be paying for food in the garbage.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question.
Okay. Okay, the next community question that I have is, would you be willing to vote against your caucus position if it is in the best interest of your local school districts?
Yes.
Well, that was a quick one.
I have made it very clear from the onset of my candidacy that I am running as a Republican. I've been a lifelong swing voter. I am less concerned about political platforms and agendas. I'm concerned about what are the best policies. And I have an allegiance to voters and the district, and that's who I'm beholden to. And I've been very clear on that. That's on my website, and I will stick to it because that's very important to me. And it's one of the things that I've been disappointed about with the Democrat trifecta last year, was that it was party line all the time. And I know that there were Democrats who didn't want to vote always, but they did. And I think it's a problem. And I think we need independent voices and independent thinkers. And I commit to be that person.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And at this time, I'm going to give you a chance to do your closing statement. You have 1 minute.
Okay, great. Well, I think the best way to sum up the key difference between me and my opponent, who is not here today, is to say this, is that I believe that less top-down interference in education allows for the greatest opportunities for our children's growth and their excellence and their accountability. I believe that more control for teachers and principals allows and empowers educators to exercise autonomy in their districts and their classrooms and have full agency over how they teach kids and how they manage their classrooms and how they help kids succeed. It means that they have greater control over how to spend money as well. And I feel like it fosters personal accountability. And we know that personal accountability ultimately is the greatest path to empowerment and success. As a candidate, I am still learning, as I said, exactly how much of our resources we need for schools. Oh, wow. Well, I will just say thank you so much. I had about 20 more seconds, but I ill-timed this. So thank you so much for having me.
It's a steep shift from 2 minutes to 1. Very,
It
goes
is.
really fast.
I think I was, yes, it absolutely is. But I am very, very grateful for the opportunity to speak with you all.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Brooke.
Well, excuse me. Thank you so much, Stacy, for being here today. The Hopkins LAC would like to thank you for your time today and for your interest in education issues. The LAC members, along with your constituents, enjoy learning more about your priorities for education funding and policies that will affect the future of Minnesota students. We appreciate your candidacy and wish you the best of luck in the November 5th elections.
Thank you all. Thank you all for being here and giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts on this important topic.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Stacy.
Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.
Likewise. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. This concludes our candidate forum for 2024.
All righty. Take care, everyone. Thank you for joining.